Which social media platforms and content strategies should you be using in your 2024 marketing plan? I'm Natasha. I'm a video marketing coach. I'm also a creator and an agency owner. And I'm going to be revealing my entire 2024 content strategy, including what platforms I'm focusing on, how often I'm posting, and what strategies I'm leaning into. So let's dive right on in. Okay, first let's go over platforms that I'm going to be focusing on with, of course, Instagram. Instagram is my main social media platform with my biggest following. And so this is going to be my posting frequency. First, we have Reels, which is going to be my main type of content. And my goal is going to be 3 to 4 Reels a week. And one of those are going to be dedicated to sharing more about the podcast episode or YouTube video that I'm posting that week. So it'll essentially be repurposed from that, kind of like a little bit of a teaser. And then on top of that, we have weekday stories. So my philosophy on when and how often you're posting is really that it should fall within your own work schedule. So I don't post on weekends. I don't story early in the morning or late at night because that's not within my office hours. So that's why weekdays is perfect for me for stories, for kind of sharing more behind the scenes, personal touch points and things like that. And then we have one carousel post a week. I always get asked as a video marketing coach, do you like carousels? Are you anti-carousels? And I love carousels. I always like to think of Instagram. The more surfaces you use on Instagram, the better results you're going to get. And also, people consume information in different ways. So sometimes I like to maybe share the same idea or concept that I've talked about in another piece of content, but in a carousel so people can kind of digest it in a different way. But it's also really great for things like sharing launch information or for also pinning to the top of your profile. So my goal is to do one weekly carousel. And notice I say carousel and not feed post. I think if you're going to post a feed post, make it multiple slides. It's so much more engaging and it's going to perform a lot better. Okay, on to my next platform, which actually is like what I kind of think of as like a duo. So that is the podcast, the Shine Online podcast, and my YouTube channel. So let's kind of get a little bit of context and go back to 2023, which is when the entire year I was in the HubSpot Creators Program in the HubSpot Network. So essentially, I had a really big goal that I had to hit of 10,000 monthly downloads, and then it kept growing from there. So not only was I growing my show, but I was also getting funding and resources from HubSpot to do so, along with, of course, doing ads, which you probably heard if you've listened to my podcast. This year, I decided not to continue in the program, and it really served me last year. It was such an amazing opportunity, and it was so fun to just go all in for growing my podcast. But with the goals that I have for the podcast moving forward, I found that it didn't make a lot of sense for me to continue in the program. So what does this mean for the podcast? You are going to get weekly podcast episodes, which we are back in the swing of with literally what you're listening to or watching right now. And also a big thing that I tested out last year was taking certain podcast episodes and turning them into visual episodes or video episodes you can watch on YouTube. And now my goal is to do that for all of my podcast content. This is becoming the norm for podcasting. If you are going to create a podcast, you might as well double down and also create a video. Some people just love to watch a video off to the side. They love to consume content in a different way. And I really have nailed how we edit and create and formulate a podcast episode to then translate to a platform like YouTube. And last year, since I was focusing on the podcast so much, I really didn't focus on YouTube at all. It was such an afterthought. I posted my podcast video episodes. I posted a few vlogs here and there, but that was pretty much it. And just from the content I already had existing on my channel and those very sporadic, inconsistent pieces of content I was creating last year, we were still able to get almost 1,000 followers just by not doing the most. So I really want to double down on not only those podcast video episodes, but also on YouTube content. So my goal is to by Q2 to be doing 1 to 2 organic, just exclusive to YouTube content. So there's going to be a lot more deeper dives, kind of behind the scenes, very visual, and really focused on video content. But I also want to touch on things like YouTube and podcasts and the other platforms that I'm on. And really my goal with these longer form platforms is of course to kind of use them to then repurpose to my other platforms, which I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit, but also to monetize them. And when you think of monetize, when it comes to YouTube, you're thinking of AdSense, or when you think of monetizing when it comes to a podcast, you might think of like running ads. But for me, this looks like ideally being able to have brand sponsors sponsor content to be mentioned or included in that. Or it means sponsoring it myself and sharing more about my free and paid resources, which is something I've already done, but I definitely want to double down on. Something I'm going to talk about more later is kind of my selling strategy is going to be shifting this year, where I'm not going to be just doing exclusive launches, but I also am going to be building out evergreen funnels so my offers can be selling and enrolling people on the back end. So a big part of my longer form content is I really want to build those around those evergreen funnels so they can be attracting people into those funnels. Okay, and on to my next platform, my ride or die. We got email. So when it comes to email, I kind of have two different posting cadences that I go with. The first is that I'll be posting 1 to 2 nurture emails a week, usually with like some type of call to action, whether it's a free resource or a podcast episode or one of my offers. And I also include in that regular weekly cadence one promo email, which essentially is promoting or sharing more about a podcast episode or a YouTube video. So essentially I'm aiming for 2 to 3 emails a week to my regular email list, which you can join through the description. Once we're getting into launch mode, this is where I like to amp things up, where I'm sending 1 to 3 emails a day, which I know sounds like a lot, but it was such a game changer for me in my email marketing strategy. I joined the most incredible email program last year as one of my investments in my business. And as someone who already liked email and saw great results for it, the few shifts and changes I made in my emails made such a big difference. So definitely check out more details about that program if you're interested. I have an affiliate link in the description. And then kind of the last thing here, which is going to be totally new territory for me, is actually creating a whole new Instagram account. So at the end of last year, I created a boutique agency, Shine Studio. And if you are new, or maybe you've been following along for a while, you might know that I did social media management when I started my business. I let go of it in 2020 when my personal brand and other parts of my business were growing so much just to balance everything. And now I have brought it back for doing done for you video content management and also other fun things like launches, shoots, and in-person event coverage. And so as we're building that part of the business, we want to make sure we're creating an Instagram presence. And even though it's something I definitely am going to be sharing about on my Instagram through stories and occasional feed content, I really want to make sure I'm focusing on an entire strategy of its own, because for done for you providers, your Instagram is almost like a website and a portfolio of its own. So I really want to share case studies, share about our process, share projects we're working on, and introduce people into the team so we can really get people that are interested in working with us, not only following along, but taking that next step of booking a sales call or inquiring. So if you're interested in working with me with the agency, definitely check out the details about that in the description. So that is kind of an in progress thing, which I feel like would be fun to do like an update on how it's going, what's been working, and what strategies we're using for that Instagram. Okay, so that is an overview of all my platforms and my posting frequencies. As you probably noticed, there are platforms that were not mentioned here, like LinkedIn, like TikTok, or even Threads. Are people on Threads? I know people are on Threads. And that is by intention, right? The goal is that you want to be as visible as possible on as many platforms that make sense for you. And while I would definitely love to focus on LinkedIn, and while I absolutely see so much opportunity for me on TikTok, right now I'm focusing on the platforms that have worked really well for me, knowing that I can always add on later. So this is your reminder that you can absolutely do the same. Okay, so we're going to wrap things up by talking about what overall strategies am I going to be using on these platforms and in my content. The first I already hinted at, and it is balancing launching with evergreen. So I love launching. It's something that I do a lot for my clients, and I've always done for my different offers, from VIP days to courses, and right now with my group coaching programs. But a big goal of mine for this year is to not just have to rely on launches to essentially enroll all of my clients. Yes, we are still going to be doing multiple launches a year, but we also really want to be focusing on building out an evergreen funnel. I've launched enough to know what content converts, what lead magnets work really well. And so we're essentially putting all those puzzle pieces together so people have an opportunity to join those offers anytime. And so right now that looks like adding a few upgrades to my signature program, the Video Content Camp, and updating my challenge, which has welcomed in 2,000 people over the last year. And we're doing a few tweaks, a few updates, and we are going to be hosting that live super soon. So definitely stay tuned for that. The next thing is actually changing what I'm creating content about. I definitely will continue to talk about video and content and all of that good stuff, but I really want to be incorporating more of myself as a personal brand. I feel like I have so much to share, and by just talking about video, I'm honestly doing my audience a disservice because I feel like there's so much value that I can offer outside of that. But I also feel like that can open so many doors for me as a creator when it comes to different revenue streams. And so I actually invested in a coach that is helping me double down and kind of diversify what my current content pillars are, so I can start to add in a few of those personal touch points. So I really want to be sharing about like my wellness routines, my hobbies, all of those fun interests. The next one, which I've already kind of started to roll out, is creating my own kind of editing style when it comes to my Reels content. There's a lot of different trains of thoughts when it comes to when you're adding text or closed captions or you're editing content. Do you want things more produced with a fancy camera and fancy flashy things? Or do you want it looking more organic and using just native stuff? And to be honest, I really don't think it cares as long as you're being consistent with whatever you choose. But I've really been inspired by not necessarily wanting to go full forced into highly produced reels, but to have kind of a signature thing in how I edit my content. And that has looked like adding in my own text and closed captions and my brand colors and my brand fonts, and really getting creative with how I'm editing. This is such an important reminder that if you are consistently using the same content strategy year after year and you are not changing a thing, that could be a really big reason why you're not happy with the results that you're seeing. And so as you see, I'm just making a few tweaks here and there to improve what I'm doing and make sure that I'm not just getting comfortable and stagnant with what's working, because then it'll eventually not be working anymore. The next one is continuing to improve my systems when it comes to how I'm planning out creating my content and also repurposing. As you see, I'm really doubling down on long form content this year. So I want to make sure I have a process for how do I take that longer form content and make sure that it's exclusive to those platforms, but also using a few nuggets here and there for my other pieces of content. This also means working ahead. So batching podcast episodes all in one go, or even batching creative ideas for carousels. Carousel design is one of those things that I don't love doing, and it takes me way too long to do. So I outsource that to my amazing designer, Fabi. And so she's able to take the outlines and the concepts and the copy that I want on a carousel and make it look beautiful. So my goal is to be 1 month ahead of those and constantly batching them. So they're essentially a low lift type of content that's always ready for me to post. And the last one is more talking reels. I am the queen of low lift video content, and I love recording stock content, aka B-roll, and having video clips ready to go so I can make posting really easy. And last year when I had some struggles with mental health and I was really overwhelmed with certain things that were going on in my life and my business, it was so nice to be able to rely on those low lift strategies of like using B-roll and creating great easy content. But I really want to go back to one of the pieces of content that I love creating, and it is talking content. I feel like this is something people are wanting more and more, this like longer form, chatty series type of content. And so this is something I want to include more of along with those other types of video content for my reels. So that is a little bit of everything. I hope you found this interesting and maybe found a few tips you can use for your own video strategy. Make sure you subscribe to the Shine Online podcast for new episodes, and also subscribe on YouTube so you make sure you can watch the video visual episodes. See you in the next one.